It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us. I want to welcome back to the program. We got Mr. Frank Glidewell, a conservative Republican for State Senate District 8 on the line. Frank, welcome back to the show.
Good morning to you, Paul.
Good morning.
I've been spreading the word, trying to get you a little credit for this, but, for the last 2 months, you've been talking about the tax farce, and the last couple of weeks, it kind of got hot on the grocery tax.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in our newspaper over the weekend, it come out that the governor that's a no issue. We are not going to have a grocery tax. And, when I was listening to it a month or so ago, well, that looked like the only thing that we were talking about, other than these tax cuts on exemptions. That doesn't sound like a tax cut either. But anyway, I want to thank you for that, or the state of Arkansas should. Plato once said, if you do not take interest in the affairs of your government, then you're doomed to bound to live under the rule of fools.
Well,
I don't think it's changed, and we may need to look at changing the word fools to me. But anyway, it seems like a lot of the effort is only me deal. Thank you.
Well, hey, Frank, I appreciate that's very flattering. I'll take the credit that you're giving me, and I'll just give it to Jan Morgan, because I honestly think, I know Conduit News has we've been talking about the grocery tax, but it's Jan's presence in this race that has forced Asa to the right. And so I'm excited that we're not going to raise the grocery tax. I wonder if we should get that in writing from the governor and actually get his signature on it, because I'm wondering what may happen after the primary if he should win. So there's obviously that to work out. We're talking with Frank Glidewell. So Frank, let me ask you this: what do you think about the conviction last week of John Woods? He was convicted on 15 of 17 counts. The people are going to see justice. And compared to the previous senator from your district that you're running to replace, Senator Jake Files, who pled guilty, that involved the same government fund, general improvement funds.
Oh, one of the issues that I thought on that, we pretty well all knew this was happening. Even we knew it here in Fort Smith for, 3 or 4 years before the FBI or anybody got into it. But I hate it that the governor gave a fundraising party for that guy, and a lot of us knew what was happening. I can't believe that we could give a fundraiser for him. But anyway, I guess that's just the way you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But that bothered me when he gave that fundraiser for John.
So I've got one of your mailers here, and I really like it. Talks about some of the issues, what you believe. Of course, early voting starts today. It says here that you oppose Obamacare. Tell us about that opposition.
Oh, well, you hit on my sore spot. Paul, in 2009, I worked to try to keep us out of the state, out of that. In 2009, we had 52,000 people on the Medicaid payroll. And at that time, we were paying, I think it was about $250 a person if they used it. If they did not use it, we didn't have to pay that $275. Well, today we got 280,000, and I think it's 500 plus that we have to pay each month for every individual on it. Not if they use it, it's everybody has to pay that. We couldn't afford it in 2009. Now, I've tried to do some research, and I've had some people at Little Rock do this, but we borrowed money to pay our unemployment insurance. That was in 2009 because we didn't have enough to pay that, and I thought that we borrowed some from the Fed's own, our 10% of Obamacare.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do have proof that we did borrow it from for the unemployment insurance, but I can't find it on that. But we couldn't afford it in 2009. We had trouble. We're a balanced budget state, but I have proof that we did borrow for our unemployment insurance. Well, that doesn't sound like balanced budget, but I brought that up, even on the floor. But they felt like that the feds would give us what? Or just give that to us, and we wouldn't have to pay it back. What we did pay it back. Anyway, Obamacare is a disaster. It was fed to us on the biggest lie. Keep your insurance $2,500 less. Keep your doctor. Boy, hadn't that been
Frank,
that's just such a lie.
I know. It was sold by lies. And matter of fact, the key architect of Obamacare, Jonathan Gruber, said so. Frank, I want to ask you this. You being a state representative before, a former state representative down there, the environment down in Little Rock can seem, it is. It's just toxic, I feel like. So you think it's gotten better down there or it's gotten worse down there?
Well, as you probably know, I have a friend, Brian King, and we've talked about me running for, I guess, 2 years, but he seems to think it's got worse, but maybe with these convictions that, things, we might try to be doing things right for a while, but right now it does. It seems like, or maybe it's just that the suits and the charges and things are coming forward, but I feel like there's 2 more big prospects out there.
Mm-hmm.
But the FBI sure does work slow on it.
Yeah, they sure do. They work a lot, much too slow for my tastes. We're talking with Frank Glidewell, a state Senate candidate for District 8. So, Frank, on one of your mailers I got in front of me here, make Arkansas more business-friendly to attract and retain good-paying jobs. Now, what is your philosophy there? Because there seems to be, in the Republican Party, maybe 2 competing philosophies on how to make Arkansas a more business-friendly state.
Paul, it all has to do with taxes, in my opinion. If we don't get more comparables with the surrounding states, I just don't see that we can, we're going to draw any jobs. You've got Texas and Florida, Virginia. They never got into this Obamacare. You see they're not having a problem. And anyway, you've got to balance your taxes compared to other states to ever get anything. We've got to have good health care, good, reasonable health care. Well, our health care is every year it goes up. Insurance make more, and now the hospitals are, originally I blamed a lot of Obamacare on the hospitals and insurance, but now I see that UAMS has laid off 200, and that's really our only teaching hospital in the state. So we do need to kind of look at our taxes and health care, our schools and things like that. That brings more jobs and more companies into Arkansas. But we know that we're 39th on state climate. We're about 2nd or 3rd on taxing the people. It just we sure need to be looking at taxes instead of spending increases.
Yeah. So Frank, we gotta find a way to get there in terms of kind of shifting, I think, our mentality. I mean, everybody. It seems like all these Republicans, they want to run on tax decreases, or they want to at least be able to say that they cut taxes when the government getting more money from the people now than it did, last year on some of this stuff. And so I feel like at some point we have to get spending under control if you want to give people tax cuts. And if spending stays the same or, only grows moderately, with inflation or whatever, which we're not at that level right now. And if the economy grows, so if government can stay the same size and the economy grows, then government has actually gotten smaller in reference to, compared to the private sector. And I think that's got to be the goal, but we got to get the spending under control.
That's right. We've increased our spending over $600 million, so that doesn't sound like that we've got it under control. One of my opponents, I saw his ad in the newspaper, is a lead sponsor and $150 million in tax cuts. I tell you what, I do not know where any of the tax cuts are, but I do know the tax increases that he's put on or voted for. But had you ever heard that we had cut taxes $150 million in the last 3 years? But it does say that his lead sponsor, so that doesn't say that they were passed. I don't think any of them were passed.
Well, the issue here is, I mean, I believe they were passed. There was a $100 million cut, and then there was a $50 million cut. But the problem is if you grew spending by $600 million in that same time, first of all, government's gotten larger, not smaller. And second of all, it kind of exposes why they were trying to raise the grocery tax, why they tried to raise the internet tax, why they tried to they created a digital downloads tax, why they tried to raise the gas tax, why they did raise they successfully raised taxes on tires. They successfully created a new tax on tires. They refused to let the military tax exemption just be absorbed, and instead they ended up raising a tax on candy and soda, and eventually that ended up being a net tax increase because the government ended up getting more money after the fact. It was supposed to be revenue neutral. They were so hungry for revenue, Frank. They were so thirsty for revenue. And, you know, the liberals and John Brummett, they would love to blame that on the supposed measly tax cuts. I mean, they wasted $200 million on software. $150 million is nothing. The reality is we have to have that revenue because the key driver of our spending in this state is Obamacare Medicaid expansion. And the fact is, any argument, and they had their flawed arguments as to why Obamacare was good for this state. We could go through them one by one and reject them. But any argument that this was a good move financially for the state of Arkansas expired after 2017 because now Arkansas actually has to start paying our own state money to this program. And that's what's lost on these guys. Go ahead.
That will surface. We all knew that. You know, when they come in 10, 11, and feds took over the total Obamacare, we didn't have to pay 10%. And look at all the people that got on. Well, that was a revenue increase for the state of Arkansas. There's no telling how much. You're talking about over $1 billion, and they were turning around and taxing that too. You brought up a tire tax. I went to a car show last weekend at Greenwood, and anyway, I was passing out cards, and we was talking, and this guy came up to me, and he said, you want to answer a question? I said, well, I'll do my best. Well, anyway, he said, you passed this tire tax. Now, we've been collecting it, and we don't have any place to put or take the tires. They're supposed to drive from Greenwood to Van Buren's supposed to have a depot there to pick up the tires. He said, I've been there twice, loaded up my trailers, and when I get over there, there was nobody there and nobody to take the tires, and I had to bring them back home. He said, I've got 2 other friends that's done the same thing. So, you know, that I think they need to get that worked out. But anyway, I told him, I said, also, my opponent had drafted a bill. One of my opponents had drafted the bill to charge you for mileage. And he said, I hadn't heard anything about that. I said, okay. Well, I think it was too close to the election, and it's kind of on hold right now. But
no,
anyway,
listen. I'll talk about that. So one of your opponents in this special election is State Representative Matt Pitch, and Matt Pitch, he sponsored a piece of legislation that would have started a test program to tax people by monitoring their odometers in their cars, and it was back in 2015, and I talked about it and exposed it, and they pulled it down, and they didn't run it again because it was ridiculous. Now, they would say, you know, well, it was only going to be for electric cars, so the electric cars pay their fair share. But, I mean, I thought we were voting for Republicans to get creative with ways to cut taxes, not get creative with new ways to tax us. And that's what they're doing down there. It's so frustrating because you and I both know if it was more efficient to tax electric cars by their odometer trackage, then they would eventually do that to all of us as well. I mean, that's the way government works. It's a slippery slope. And the fact that Matt Pitch, who I'm told considers himself to be a Republican intellectual, can't understand the pitfalls of big government and the benefits of limited government are frustrating. That's frustrating to me.
Yes, it is. Paul, also on that mileage tax, we live in Arkansas, and probably a third of the populations live in the country. And I'd really hate to ask people to pay a mileage tax on top of their gasoline tax, bring their kids into town to play ball, doctor's appointment, things like that. That was just love. That is creative taxing. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But here you've got the Walmart tax, the candy tax, the soft drink tax, unemployment tax. That was the kicker. You get a person down and out, and that's his
the Republicans
income, and you go tax it.
Yeah, the Republicans decided to tax unemployment. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's so strange. Okay, hey, Frank Glidewell, I appreciate it. State Senate candidate for District 8. It's always a pleasure to have you on, sir. Early voting starts today. Best of luck to you.
Thank you again, Paul.
Yes,
have a great day.
Absolutely. Want to give a shout-out to the great affiliate, KFPW, out of Fort Smith, 1230 AM and 96.7 FM, The Marshall. Thank you guys for listening, and that is a guy who's in your district, Frank Glidewell, asking for your vote. We got to take a break. Back in a minute.